Welcome to the City of Houston's 2026 Infrastructure Design Manual webinar. Before I begin, it should be noted that this webinar has been created with minimal use of artificial intelligence. My name is Luis Garza, Managing Engineer of the Design and Construction Standards team. I will continue to guide you through the introduction and overview sections of this webinar and will be one of two moderators today. For those of you who may not know, the Office of the City Engineer's Engineering section is tasked with ensuring the city's ordinances, design manual, and standards are carried out in the city's right-of-way. The engineering section sees several hundred sets of plans a week for review, so we're in a good position to identify problems within our standards and develop solutions. Today's webinar includes multiple presentations from city employees. We'll only be touching on the major changes to the standards today. This agenda is provided in the webinar announcement if you'd like to keep track of the presentations as we progress. We'll do our best to follow the schedule so attendees will know when a subject matter will be presented. If you're not familiar with the team's webinar environment, this slide provides a quick guide. Select the Q&A icon on the right side of the screen and select Ask a Question box near the bottom of the screen to ask your question. Under the Q&A tab and All tab, you'll find all attendee questions. Under the My Post tab, you'll find only the questions you've submitted. When you type your questions, please note the IDM chapter and topic to give your questions context. Before I present an overview of the updates made during the 2023-2026 review cycle, here's a quick description of the scope of Houston Public Works Design and Construction Standards. The city's infrastructure design manual, construction specifications, and the standard details provide minimum requirements for design and construction of the city's infrastructure that is operated and maintained by Houston Public Works. The IDM specifications and standard details communicate the city's needs and captures lessons learned. It's my team's responsibility to lead this effort with the support of various stakeholders within the Houston Public Works, other city departments, and external stakeholders. We'll start with a quick overview of the review cycle process. I'd like to point out that an executive summary was released with this year's IDM. It includes a summary of the changes and implementation of the changes. This can be found in the first few pages of the IDM. For current policy, each chapter in the IDM will be reviewed at least once every 5 years. The city has a review schedule that is posted on the website. The associated standard drawings and construction specifications are reviewed in conjunction with each IDM chapter being reviewed. This year's review cycle included Chapter 9 and associated construction specifications and details. There's a process to address significant issues within our standards outside of the designated review year. However, care is needed to ensure all stakeholders are informed and changes have been properly vetted. A good example of this would be this year's changes to Chapter 6 of the IDM. Also, changes prior to publishing can be made with the use of a supplement. The city had 2 supplements this year related to Chapter 9 that were incorporated into the IDM in 2026. Supplements, once properly vetted, must be signed by the city engineer and the director. Once a supplement is signed and put into effect, my team works to implement these updates and notify the community. Establishing the website, the distribution list, and the webinar are all part of setting up effective communication to alert everyone of any changes in the city standards. The IDM chapters listed here were modified off review cycle. The reasons for this will be discussed during each presentation section. This is the timeline for this review cycle. This is a similar process that we followed in 2023. However, as you can see, it extended past our normal timeline. Typically, the cycle follows the city's fiscal year, but due to extensive changes this year, it extended beyond the end of the fiscal year. The open comment period began in August of 2023. The city communicated the open comment period on the Houston Permitting Center website. Comments were compiled, summarized, and provided to the review cycle committee. The committee met over several months, and a draft of the standard was created. From there, we met with external organizations for their input. The purpose of these meetings was to vet and coordinate all proposed changes before they were implemented. This review cycle, we also had a change in city leadership, which identified other items in Chapter 9 that were to be addressed. These items proceeded through the process outlined, which in turn had a cycle through our coordination with our stakeholders and pushed our timeline into 2026. February 2026, we completed the final revisions and published the documents in March of 2026. That said, it should be noted that there were no new publications of the IDM and associated documents in 2024 or 2025. This edition of the IDM supersedes the 2023 edition. Having stretched more than two years with hundreds of modifications, it took a village to properly vet and polish the proposals in this review cycle. The many members of this cycle's internal committee are listed here. We met with representatives from each Houston Public Works service line and also the planning department. These representatives are asked to keep their service lines updated during the review process. Thank you, committee members, for your efforts this cycle. It could not have been done without your expertise. Once the city has developed draft documents of all the proposed changes, we work with the external partners to gather additional input. Thank you again, external committee members, for working with the city on this cycle. We appreciate your support. There's a 90-day design grace period for implementation of the City of Houston's 2026 edition of the IDM. For Houston Public Works Capital Improvement Plan projects managed by Houston Public Works service lines, 60% designs that have not been submitted prior to June 1st, 2026 must comply with all standards in the 2026 IDM. For projects in the public or private sector, plans submitted for initial review after June 1st, 2026 must comply with all standards in the 2026 IDM. The city must receive substantially complete plans before June 1st to be grandfathered under the 2023 standards. For plats and easements, submissions for preliminary plat review after June 1st, 2026 must comply with the 2026 IDM. For additional background, refer to the 2026 IDM announcement and IDM executive summary. If applicants have submitted a project prior to June 1st, 2026 and would like to use the 2026 requirements, the existing project must be canceled and a new project submitted. Directions on how to cancel plans can be found in the 2026 IDM announcement. The IDM summary is provided at the beginning of the IDM document and gives implementation information for the IDM, standard specifications, and standard details. Before we move on, let's talk about the website briefly. All the items discussed today can be found on the city's Design and Construction Standards website. The link provided on the slide will take you to the website. Note that the tabs within the red box on the web page are where the standard documents presented today are located. This concludes the introduction and overview of this webinar. I'll hand it over to Christopher McCann to introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. At this time, we're going to pass things over to Layli Javidania. She will be reviewing some of the general changes that were made this year.
Hello, everyone. I'm Layli Javidania, a supervising engineer at Design and Construction Standards Group. I'll be reviewing the general changes made during the 2023-2026 review cycle. Redline versions showing all changes are available online. In addition, revision bars are included in the standards to help easily identify updates. For this review cycle, change bars have been incorporated to the final document. The change bars are located on the left side of the page to indicate that a revision has been made to the content on the right side of the bar. Chapter 9 has been reorganized into sections to improve navigation throughout the chapter. In addition, all titles in the table of contents are hyperlinked to their corresponding locations in the document. Clicking any link in the table of contents will take you directly to the related paragraph, table, or figure. We also continued adding placeholders throughout the chapter. As you navigate through the pages, you can now look at the top left corner to see the reference for the previous paragraph without needing to return to the previous page. We also continued adding placeholders throughout the chapter. As you navigate through pages, you can now look at the top. Sorry, there was a technical difficulty for me. So we added new definitions that were not included in the previous version of the IDM. In addition, during this review cycle, we went through chapters to ensure that only proper nouns and defined terms are capitalized. This concludes the general changes made during the review cycle. I'll hand it over to Christopher McCann to introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Layli, for that update. We'll now be returning things to Luis Garza once again, and he'll be reviewing chapters 1, 3, 6, and 17.
Thank you, Christopher. Let's take a look at the major changes made to chapters 1, 3, 6, and 17 this review cycle. These chapters were not officially part of the 2023-2026 review cycle. These changes were made to resolve some important issues identified by the city. In Chapter 1, General Requirements, within the submittal requirements for publicly, privately funded projects, it was clarified when a project would expire. Going forward, a project that meets all three of the following criteria will be considered expired. The project has gone over 1 year initial project number lifetime since the first plan review. Number 2, the project has no activity within 30 days of the previous review. And number 3, the project has no exceptions granted by OCE for items required if city or other government agencies. Chapter 3, Graphic Requirements, had the following changes this year. Publicly, privately funded projects that are not considered capital improvement projects shall provide the major utilities and overall scope of work on the cover sheet as a part of the project title. Also, a new website link for electronic plan review has been provided. Changes to Chapter 6, Utility Locations, within the Subsurface Utility Exploration or SU section was made. It was clarified in 2 separate articles that for both trench and trenchless construction, higher level of SU requirements are invoked when vertical or horizontal clearances are less than required by this manual from the proposed utility to existing water lines or sanitary sewer force mains. These requirements in the 2023 version of the IDM apply to clearances to all existing utilities. Therefore, the applicable scope has been reduced to apply only to existing water lines and sanitary force mains. For trench construction, if the clearances of the manual cannot be met, the engineer isn't required to go directly to a level A SU. The requirements have been updated to allow a stepwise increase in level of SU. A level B is required to confirm the location of the existing utility. If a level B cannot provide an accurate location, then a level A SU is required. It is also noted that a level A or level B SU must be provided to grant a variance for the utility clearance. Another addition to Chapter 6 is a new requirement for minimum clearance between underground structures greater than 3 feet deep and public utilities. Underground structures include, but are not limited to, foundations, footings, piers, posts, and poles. A minimum 5-foot clearance shall be maintained between the exterior of the underground structure and public utility. This requirement was added to protect utilities in side lot and back lot easements from non-utility underground structures. Particularly, the city has frequently experienced damage to wastewater lines due to structure encroachments. In Chapter 17, Pedestrian, Bicycle, and Transit Design Requirements, the safety buffer requirements were changed by noting that Chapter 15, Table 15.7, also provides guidance on whether the safety buffer shall be paved. That concludes the general changes in Chapters 1, 3, 6, and 17. If anyone has any questions on these changes, please ask your questions in the chat box. So Christopher, have we received any questions yet?
Thank you, Luis. Firstly, I can proceed with a few frequently asked questions that we generally tend to receive. The first question here would be, does the overall scope of work proposed on the plan need to be added to CIP project cover sheets?
Great, thanks for asking that. No, the current titling used on CIP projects will remain the same. This scope will be added. The scope will be added to public privately funded projects only.
Okay, thank you, Luis. One additional question we have here is, what was the additional requirement in Table 15.7 that is now referenced in Chapter 17?
That's a great question. Paving in the safety buffer, the item that's being referenced is paving in the safety buffer is not allowed around junction boxes in the open space in the right-of-way between driveways. So that was a note that's there in Chapter 15. And so we added that to make the engineer aware in Chapter 17.
All right. I do see there is one question in the chat currently, Luis, that I'll read out. Question is the city going to update specification sections to match the CSI division format system that changed in 2004 from 16 to 50 divisions?
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you for asking that question. And so at this time, the city does not have plans to move over to the new divisions in CSI. However, my team will be discussing this internally to see if will be any changes in the future. But at this time, we have no plans.
Thank you, Luis. It does appear we received one more question at this time. The question is, are we able to set up meetings to discuss SUE for utility connections?
That's a great question. I think at this time, since we only have a limited amount of sections represented in this presentation, this question requires more input from other city sections. So we're not able to provide a response at this time. However, we will coordinate internally and include a response in the Q&A document that will be posted on our website in the coming weeks related to that question. Hey, Christopher, is there?
Okay. Yes, I'm having a further look around here. One question that did just come in once again is, can you tell us the effective date? I presume that's the effective date of the IDM.
Certainly, yes. The effective date of this edition is June 1st. So all projects after June 1st, 2026 will need to comply with the latest IDM requirements. Okay, are there any other questions coming in?
Thank you, Luis. I know at this time it appears that those are all the questions we have received to date. So that being said, from the moving right along, we're going to move into the next section of the presentation.
Christopher, I guess before we move along, I guess I'd like to just maybe discuss other updates that are there. Laylee did a great job in providing, background information on the updates that we made for navigability of our documents. And so I guess I'd like to say, thank you to my team for going through and updating those documents to make sure that they're able to be read and easy to understand. So thank you again for my group. Are there any other questions that have come in, Christopher?
I do see a question here right now. That's a good one. Will current projects be grandfathered into the previous IDM?
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe I talked a little bit about that, and so I'll kind of reiterate what I had on that slide. And so I'm assuming this is a public or private sector plan. And so, plans submitted for initial review after June 1st, 2026 must comply with all the standards in the 2026 IDM. And the city must receive a substantially complete plan before June 1st to be grandfathered under the 2023 standards. And so if the project wants to, and if anyone else wants to jump in to talk about this, but if they submitted a project prior to June 1st and would like to use the 2026 requirements, the existing project must be canceled and a new project must be submitted.
Thank you, Luis. I do see a question here that may have been a follow-up to one of your previous responses before. Excuse me, for the titles on privately funded cover sheets, are we required to provide specific details about the construction similar to what is required on the OCE covers?
Yeah, great question. And so in working with the city's team, when that requirement was drafted, they described how OCE's requirements that's how they've been enforcing it. And so this addition to the IDM is really, it's been added to the IDM for using the process that they've already been using. And so what I'd recommend, just to ensure that the person that asked the question gets the correct information for their type of project, I recommend that they contact their city contact to ask about specific requirements on their project.
Thank you, Luis. I believe we have now reached a point. I do not see any other questions coming in.
Christopher, I think there may be one here. Have any standard drawings, details, cover sheets, etc. been updated? The answer to that is yes, they have been. And I think later in this presentation, one of our presenters will be providing some information on those documents and where that information can be found. Thank you, Christopher. I think that concludes my section.
All right. Thank you again, Luis. We'll now be moving into the next portion of our presentation. We have both Johanna Clark and Ivy Wang here to discuss Chapter 9, Stormwater Design Requirements. Johanna?
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joanna Clark. I'm the Deputy City Engineer for Houston Public Works. I'm glad to present you an overview of the major updates incorporated in Chapter 9 of the IDM, which contains the city's stormwater design requirements. The chapter has been reorganized, making it easier to follow. All technical terms are now defined, and previous memos and detention supplements have been incorporated. Chapter 9 updates will be presented in 3 sections. I will initiate sharing all topics part of the update, and the following sections will present those more in detail, highlighting differences between the 23 and the 2026 IDM editions. The primary updates implemented in Chapter 9 include a policy update that clarifies detention and outfall requirements to be applied to developed sites that outfall into jurisdictions different from the City of Houston. Update to the software allow for modeling and design of drainage facilities. Updates to the runoff coefficient C values. Clarification provided for tailwater elevation section for selection for hydraulic grade line analysis. Updates to outfall design, including back of inlet connection, sheet flow exceptions, and others. Criteria tables with detention design requirements were updated. We expanded on exceptions to detention criteria, including aspects such as maintenance work, Lake Houston watershed, and others. Detention credits were revised and details elaborated for complete clarity. Those include credits for existing and removing impervious cover, projects in the public right-of-way, definition of the minimus impact, and others. Criteria and guidelines for underground detention applications were added. Also, criteria defining past memos for certain areas in the city was incorporated in the chapter with corresponding maps. Updates were added to the thermoplastic pipe requirements. Information for the various inlet types was updated. The stormwater quality section was updated and improved for clarity. Details and guidance were added to stormwater pollution prevention plans. And lastly, and of great importance, updates were incorporated in the low impact development section. Now, to dive deeper into these updates to Chapter 9, I'll pass the floor over to Managing Engineer Ivy Wong.
Thank you, Johanna. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ivy Wang. I'm glad to start my presentation. I will cover IDM Chapter 9 Update Part 1, including some of design requirements and detention updates. Please be aware that I will only discuss updates and new sections. I will not repeat items that have not changed. First, the requirements. This is a sort of the policy update. When you're out for directly discharges into another jurisdiction, you must comply with the jurisdiction's outfall and the detention design criteria and get their approval. Keep in mind, these most restrictive requirements does not apply anymore. Hydraulic modeling. For capital projects or city fund projects, 2D hydraulic modeling shall be used to perform 2-year storm design and inlet design analysis. For private fund projects or municipal utility district or ETJ projects, alternative equivalent analysis modeling will be accepted. C-value update. This year, city only updated one C-value. Pavement at right-of-way has been revised from 0.9 to 0.8. Tailwater. Tailwater requirements has been divided into two categories, one for capital projects and one for non-capital projects. For capital projects, the 2,000 feet threshold has been removed. A single standard applies regardless of the project's distance to the receiving channel. All analysis must be extended to the receiving channel unless a justified exception is approved. For 2-year storm event, the starting tailwater elevation should be set at the top of outflow pipe. For 100-year storm event, the starting tailwater elevation should be the greater of the 10-year water surface elevation, or 2 feet below the top of bank. For non-capital projects, the 2,000 feet threshold remains in effect with the following updated requirements. If the receiving channel is within 2,000 feet of project limits, the same requirements as capital projects apply. If the receiving channel more than 2,000 feet from the project limits, the hydraulic model must include at least 2,000 feet of downstream trunk line from the project limits. The starting tailwater elevation should be established at the downstream end of this 2,000 feet model extent. For 2-year storm event, the starting tailwater elevation should be set at the middle point elevation between the gutter line and the soffit of the receiving pipe. For 100-year storm event, the starting tailwater elevation should be set at the 1 foot below the gutter line elevation. Any exception must be approved by Stormwater Review Group in the city office engineer. Type 2 Permanent Access Easement, or PAE. Proposed storm sewer located in the Type 2 PAE easement must be designed to meet Chapter 9 requirements unless the PAE easement won't be dedicated to the city. Also, a separate plan and profile must be submitted to the Office of City Engineer for approval. That will cover entire stormwater sewer within the easement and continuing into the city right-of-way. Design of outfalls. This is a new requirement. It allows a minimum 12-inch pipe instead of 24-inch pipe to connect to the back of an inlet at the city right-of-way. This requirement applies to all projects, shift-through exemption. This is applied only to single-family residential projects. Typically, low shift-through from the developed property will be allowed to drain into adjacent private properties or city right-of-way. There are a couple of cases under specific exception listed below. Shift-through will be allowed to drain into the adjacent right-of-way only. Case 1. Typically under detention criteria 1. A single tract containing one house with a direct driveway access. The tract area should be less than or equal to 15,000 square feet, with the impervious cover less than or equal to 65% of total tract size. This case falls under category 1 as highlighted in red in the detention table. Here's the example on the right side. Case 2. Under detention criteria 2. A single tract with multiple lots and the direct driveway access, or tract with a maximum of 2 lots with shared driveway access to the city right-of-way. However, you still need to meet the tract area shall be less than or equal to 15,000 square feet with impervious cover less than or equal to 65% of the total tract area. This case falls under category 1 as highlighted in red in the detention table. Here are a couple of examples below the table. Detention updates. I will break down the detention requirements into 3 parts: standard detention requirements, detention exemptions, and detention credits. For standard detention, as you know, 3 criteria along with 3 corresponding tables are used to define the standard detention requirements. Criteria 1. This table has been updated to add an alternative threshold, 40% impervious area for tract size over 15,000 square feet, which this update was in May 2025 supplement. Additionally, pipe connecting to the ditch can be smaller than 12 inches, but the minimum size is 4 inches. This requirement applies only to single tract that does not share a storm outfall with others, and also has a ditch located in front of the property. In this case, a plan and profile are not required. Criteria 2. It has also been updated to add an alternative threshold, 40% impervious area for tract size over 15,000 square feet, but less than 1 acre. Additionally, pipes connecting to the ditch can be smaller than 12 inches, but the minimum size is 4 inches. This requirement applies only to tract size less than or equal to 15,000 square feet and has a ditch located in front of this property. In this case, plan and profile are not required. Criteria 3. All development with a 20-acre or smaller shall apply a uniform detention rate of the 0.8 acre-feet per acre. Please note, a new criteria simplified the table and removed the less than 1 acre category and combines everything to the 20 acres or smaller category. And the detention rate has been revised from 0.75 acre-feet per acre to 0.8 acre-feet per acre. This previous detention chart and associated the table in 2023 Chapter 9 has been removed. And the term disturbed area has also removed. Detention exemptions. Some of detention exemptions has been already introduced in the May 2025 supplement. Typically, detention is waived for development over existing pavement under following scenarios. Scenario 1, which is covered under Article number 1, as you see. This existing impervious cover is not redeveloped. For example, installation of the charging station equipment, adding canopies, or shade structures. Scenario 2, which is covered here under Article number 2 to number 4. Development is proposed, but there's no change to drainage patterns. For example, adding floors to existing building, roof repairs, or changing in roof use. Scenario 3, which is covered here under Article number 5. This is new. Maintenance activities are defined in the article 9.1.04.jj here. Maintenance activity means any work done to maintain the original line and grades, hydraulic capacity, or original purpose of the site, and also allow any increase in impervious area. For example, asphalt overlays on the existing roadways, repairs to existing parking lots, including use of the different materials, and the repair or replacement of underground utilities. Please refer to the article 9.2.01.h.3.n for additional details. Detention requirements are exempt for those activities as long as the existing drainage pattern is maintained. Lake Houston. If the development is entirely with the Lake Houston watershed and it discharges directly to the Lake Houston, detention is exempt. However, if only the portion of project lies within the watershed, a drainage analysis is required, and this analysis must be extended to the Lake Houston. As you see here, 3 previous detention memos has been incorporated into Chapter 9, which covers Central Business District, Texas Medical Center, and the Lower Buffalo Bayou area. If your project is located within those specific area, detention is not required, but you must implement low-impact development or LEED design features to help reducing runoff to the downstream systems. Additionally, projects in North Buffalo Bayou must also provide a direct connection to the bayou. Detention credits. For redevelopment over an existing impervious area, which falls under detention criteria 3, detention storage credit may be applied at the rate of the 0.4 acre-feet per acre. Supporting documents such as surveys, photos are required to qualify. Final detention should be determined using the equation provided here, which is highlighted in the red. If a development increases impervious area in the city right-of-way, for example, add sidewalks, left turns, monuments, or travel lanes, detention is not required. However, a 2-year storm capacity analysis must ensure the existing system can handle the additional runoff from this development. If not, further analysis must confirm the 2-year HGL stays below the gutter line, and the 100-year HGL remains below the maximum ponding elevation. If those criteria are not met, this project is allowed to qualify for detention credit. Legacy projects. Legacy projects are developments where the detention system and the storm sewer has been permitted and fully constructed based on a master drainage plan approved after 2002. Those projects can complete their remaining build-out under the original approved drainage plan without being subject to new or additional detention requirements if they meet qualification requirements provided in this article. Detention credits for dry grass lined basins is not automatic. It may be approved only when supported by an infiltration report demonstrating soil infiltration rate and a hydraulic analysis confirming the basin's performance in managing runoff from this development. De minimis impact credits. Keep in mind, these credits only applies to redevelopments where the increased impervious area is small and has a minimal impact on the drainage system. Common examples are the EV charge stations to existing parking lots, add the deck or swimming pool to a home, or add the parking spaces to existing parking lot. For single-family residential development that fall under detention criteria 1 and 2, Scenario 1. When tract size 15,000 square feet or smaller, you can add up to 5% more impervious area. For example, add the house, driveway, patio, and others without detention. This applies only after you exceed the normal 65% limit, but your total impervious area cannot go over 70% of the tract size. Scenario 2. When tract size greater than 15,000 square feet, you can still add up to 5% more impervious area without detention. This applies when you exceed the standard limit, either greater of 9,750 square feet or 40% coverage. However, this extra impervious area allowed under this credit is capped at the 750 square feet total. For development that fall under criteria 3, Scenario 1, tract size 20 acres or smaller, you can get a credit for up to 1% of the total tract area. This credit is one time only. You cannot use it again later. Scenario 2, tract size greater than 20 acres. This is a case-by-case decision based on drainage analysis. Additional detention requirements. This year, city has introduced new requirements for underground detention. Eligibility. Residential, allowed for all projects. Commercial, allowed for sites up to 10 acres. Large sites require case-by-case approval. Public projects allow only with specific city approval. Design and engineering. Those requirements include, but are not limited to the following. Capacity must include overflow for extreme storm events and dry out within 48 hours. Safety requires a minimum of 12 inches of cover on top of the pond structure and locked access points. Stormwater quality must include BMPS to remove trash and sediment at the inflow points. Keep in mind, all plans or design must be signed and sealed by a Texas professional engineer. Maintenance and ownership. Schedules. Plan must include the manufacturer-specified schedules for trash and sediment removal. Inspections required for pre-treatment devices and potential structure problems like sinkholes. Right-of-way agreements. If underground detention system is located in city right-of-way, you must get city approval, and also they require a formal maintenance agreement with City of Houston. Additional requirements to pump the detention is number E in this article. This requirement applies only to projects that outfall directly into the Harris County facilities, and it is consistent with Harris County Flood Control District policy criteria and procedure manual or PCPM manual. That concludes my presentation. Thank you. Now we will move into the question and answer session. Hi, Linda. Have you received any questions?
Yes, thank you, Ivy. I have the first question ready for you. Do I need to submit a plan and profile project for proposing a connection less than 24 inches to the back of an inlet?
Thank you, Linda. That's really a good question. Yes, at the right-of-way, it is required in IDM Chapter 3 that any utilities line size 4 inches or large must provide the plan profile unless a specific exception is permitted. Okay, let's go next one.
All right. Next question. Do all shared driveway tracks under 15,000 square feet that are also exempt from detention qualify for sheet flow?
This also is a great question. Now, it depends on the project conditions. To qualify for sheet flow, the track must also meet the following additional requirements. The track may contain a maximum of 2 lots with a shared driveway. Track must have a direct access driveway to the right-of-way, provide adequate side grading, and the total impervious cover must be less than or equal to 65% of the total track size. Any more questions?
Yes. So next question. Are we still required to issue plan and profile sets to the OCE for drainage criteria 1 if we are tying into an adjacent curb inlet with our site drainage outfall pipe, whether it is a single 4-inch or a 12-inch?
Okay, that's really, yeah. If you try into a curb inlet, plan profile is not required.
Thank you, Ivy. Next question. Are these track size related detention requirements applicable for projects within right-of-way? For example, road widening, new sidewalks, etc.
Yeah, that's a really good question. The track size detention, yeah, refer to our city, the requirements. Yeah, if you have any activities, any increase in impervious area, that's really depends. Yeah, new sidewalk, if that's we call it, that's the increase in impervious area. Roadway widening, also still in the city right-of-way, but you increase impervious area. As I mentioned in the presentation, you got to first you analyze your capacity. If existing system still can accommodate your additional capacity, then you're okay. If you couldn't meet that criteria, then you go next. That's just analyze your HGL. If you can maintain your 2-year the HGL below the critical elevation, which is most of the time that's a gutter line, or not all, and you have to also meet 100-year water surface elevation, HGL, below the maximum ponding elevation. If you couldn't meet both of them, then you are not qualified for any credits. You may think about changing your downstream pipe, or even take a consideration for your detention. Any other questions?
Yes, the next question I have is, Can you clarify the impacts of the disturbed area removal to the detention criteria requirements? Does the impervious area credit replace the pervious disturbed area criteria?
Impact disturbed area removal. So, for example, you have a parking lot, you just remove, then you put it back. Then you can get the credits. But remember, you still have to check those qualifications. For example, you need a survey, you need the pictures to show us. I believe that's the 5 years older, new with the 5 years, I believe. So those are, then you will be qualified to use the credit. That's detention rate 0.4. So that's really, we have to check your qualification. Yeah, when we say disturb the area, that means you have activities, any construction will be happening there. Any other
Okay.
questions?
Yes. What are the minimum and maximum allowable design velocities for the flow entering the back of the inlets?
Maximum velocity, I believe we didn't change. That's still in the IDM. Is it 12 FPS, I believe. Yeah, but that's the maximum. But generally, we're looking for just the AFPS. That's typical. Yeah, then you don't have to use the energy dissipation at the outflow. Next one.
Okay. Do I still need to provide storm drainage if I am exempt from storm detention?
Yes, drainage and storm design are still required to collect and convey site runoff, even the project that are exempt from detention requirements, which is in the IDM requirements. Yeah. Next one.
Next question. My project is within city limits, but outfalls to another jurisdiction. Which requirements do I follow?
So I heard you mentioned that your project is outfall to the another jurisdiction's requirements. Then you will follow with that jurisdiction's detention and outfall requirements. However, the private on-site storm sewer design, you also have to still meet city requirements. Next one.
Okay. Next question I have here is, what if my project was originally submitted before the new IDM changes, and I would like to take advantage of the new storm changes? What is the process?
I think Luis already mentioned at the beginning. So applicants still have to cancel the original project and submit a new project. The new project must comply with all 2026 IDM requirements.
All right, thank you, Ivy. It doesn't look like we have any new questions coming in. Luis or Chris, would you like to move on?
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Thank you, Ivy. Thank you, Johanna. We've reached a moment in our agenda summary. Now we'll be taking a 10-minute break from 1:10 p.m. to 1:20 p.m. We will begin promptly at 1:20 p.m. and we will start with the IDM Chapter 9 Stormwater Design Requirements Update Part 2. So we will see everyone at 1:20 p.m.